proudly presented today by the Ministry of Agriculture. And we'd just like to give a big thank you to our judges. It's been a very long weekend, but we couldn't do things like this without you guys, so thank you so much. In no particular order, we have Shelley Witch from CPA Saskatchewan, Kate Lockhart from MCO, Nick Kochar from Refresh, Alana Cook from the Government of Saskatchewan, Kim McConnell from AdFarm, Michael Hofort from Farm Credit Canada, Tiffany Stevenson from the Ministry of Agriculture, and Mohammed Torshizi from the Department of Biosource Policy, Business and Economics, and the College of Agriculture and Bioresources. Competitors will have a maximum of 20 minutes to present. Immediately following the presentation, judges will have a total of 5 minutes to ask the presenters questions. The volunteer timekeeper will show cards at various intervals to indicate the remaining time and will stop any speaker who exceeds the maximum time limit. No questions, comments, cell phones, or picture taking will be permitted from the audience at any given time. The audience will only be permitted to applaud following the question and answer period. The audience is also banned from any material that bears the name or symbol of a competing university. And lastly, we ask that the audience exit the room immediately following the question and answer period. We begin when you're ready. Oh, I'm sorry.
Our challenge is to cut through the noise and correct the misconceptions. Trust. It's so important. We're here today to propose a plan that will build trust between you and your consumers, as well as effectively communicate a message that has been misinterpreted. Thank you. We are Black Sheep Strategy. I'm Samantha.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Hayden.
And here we are.
What's your beef with Canadian beef? Current agriculture practices are doing big things for today's food industry. However, unfortunately, the industry's come under fire recently from advertisements from companies like A&W or Chipotle's that criticize these practices, promoting a natural style that doesn't quite meet up with the actual facts of how the agriculture industry functions. Today, we want to propose a campaign for you that's going to help correct this problem for you and bring your practices back into the spotlight and back into the positive customer perception.
Looking at the industry and your company, some good things that you're currently doing, you have an efficient product. The more you can sell and the faster you can sell it, the better price you can sell it for. Saskatchewan is Canada's second largest beef producer in the country. It's affordable on, its affordability of enhanced beef is a message that is a strong point for you, but it isn't being communicated correctly. You have a misinformed public, you have a lack of trust with your customers. There are other aspects that are contributing to that, which we will discuss. And you have right now not been able to correctly communicate what values you have in the way you run your business.
So some trends that we see. Restaurant chains, as mentioned earlier, are implying that the regular beef practices are not adequate. They're inferior to these new practices of no hormones and no additives, etc. As well, there's the trend of keeping healthy food affordable. Well, honestly, I do not believe that there is a problem with the way that hormones are injected to help an animal such as a cow actually produce more of their own hormones. So what you do is still healthy, and we want to communicate that as healthy and affordable. As well, confidence in Canadian food system management has gone down 10% since 2010. This is something that we would like to address further on.
So the main challenge we want to work with today is the public stigmatization around the essential agricultural practices, specifically in the beef industry.
Challenges you're facing: building trust, communication, and lack of industry knowledge. For the trust, this is the main point that you need to have addressed immediately. It is a timely process, and we've considered that, but we believe the campaign we've put in place will effectively manage the situation. You're focused on a new target market, 18 to 30-year-olds, new head of households. They'll be making the grocery decisions. It's important that you're communicating in the right channels to directly get to these customers. Communication. Misinformed, as we've mentioned. They don't know, as a simple tagline from A&W, that they have good beef or better beef. They take that into consideration and they really value something like that. It's important that you and your company come back with something else that addresses this situation and makes your product still a number one choice for the consumer mind. The trend in fast food we've discussed already, as well as the narrow sight on agriculture as a whole. You've addressed that people consider the farmer to be the only option, the only thing that people think of when they think of point A to kitchen table for getting beef into your house. This is something that our campaign will also effectively address. Lastly, lack of industry knowledge, and once again, the campaign that we have put forward will, over a time process, because we do understand that these things take time, will be able to communicate to this target market what you are doing and why it is good.
So our objectives to address today are, with this campaign, I apologize, the destigmatization of the use of antibiotics and hormones within the beef industry. Some subpoints from that we also want to hit are the education of the reality of the current agricultural production for the average person in the population. Just the average Joe that goes to the grocery store, we want them to understand what the agricultural industry looks like, what that practice is, and how it benefits them as a consumer. We're going to educate them on entrepreneurial and employment opportunities within the agriculture industry as well as we go forward with this campaign.
So our main target market, as you have indicated, we want to target the 18 to 30-year-old age bracket. This is a young age bracket, so we have methods that are really going to communicate your message well as we want to focus on the Saskatchewan area, because Saskatchewan is the second largest beef producer in Canada.
So what we have to propose to you today is a campaign titled Betty Beef. Essentially what we want to do is attach a spokesperson, or in this case spokescow, to your business that'll introduce the agricultural practices to the average consumer. Essentially it'll be a cartoon cow that's going to go over agricultural practices, bring in industrial testimony, things like that, so the customer is aware and interested and engaged in your process. Going forward, as I had said before, our main slogan is going to be, "What's your beef with Canadian beef?" The main focus of the campaign is going to be to cut through the noise and correct the misconceptions of the Canadian beef industry with a specific focus on Saskatchewan.
In order to make the decision we had, what we considered was the perspective of the industry and where you guys currently stand. Trustworthiness, which we've mentioned there is currently a lack of, but we believe that having a spokes cow will be able to get into the consumer mindset to consider these points on a more rational level. They're not just considering food, now they have an association with this food. Also engagement. There is a strong trend in social media marketing that we've identified, and we believe Betty Beef would be a strong presence on social media. Here we formulated a one-year action plan for how we're going to identify the targets you want to hit and how we will go about doing that. It comes down to three components: digital real estate, content creation, and engagement. For digital real estate, what we will do is in the early phase, We want to identify who has a problem with what you're currently doing. What you can do is you can identify these by going on to current restaurants like A&W, Chipotle, who are claiming to have better beef than you just from having no hormones, no antibiotics, things of that sort. We're going to find out who those followers are, why they support that, and try and skew their thought process and get them back to more of a neutral playing ground. Right now, we feel that what they're considering is that they get a better feeling from going to a place like this because they think they're getting a better product. We want to first identify this target, and then we want to document what kind of things they're doing online to actively hurt your image and what you stand for. In the second phase, content creation. Once we've identified these micro segments that we can find in these social media channels, what we want to do is we want to bring forward Betty Beef in this 2 to 4 month range. And that would be going and seeing, we have Betty Beef, and what we have now is a defensive strategy that will address what your company is actively doing, addressing the main problem to the right customer. It's such a widespread consumer that we have to consider doing a lot of research before just diving into a plan like this. That's why we've given ourselves 2 months for adequate research. We also want to include more information on beef. Like we were saying earlier, it's not just the farmer, it's not just the simple, we're speeding up a process here just to gain revenues. What it is a more efficient practice that your business is doing, and what that in turn is doing is leaving a good mark as an eco footprint, and you're being a sustainable company, and we want to communicate that.
So essentially, who Betty Beef is this little cow that is going to be a representation. As Matthew said earlier, it's a spokes cow. And what Betty Beef's goal is to do is to effectively communicate the reasons why there is not a problem with the regular, I like to call, way of producing beef. So that's the role of what Betty Beef will be doing.
Lastly, the engagement. We've set up a character and a spokesperson in Betty Beef, and what Betty Beef will be doing is allowing consumers or people who are worried about their beef consumption to go on, discuss these topics on an online, your website. It'll be a web page off of that website, strictly directed towards these concerns. We will have discussion, question answers, as well as stakeholder testimony. Your farmers, suppliers, people who are transporting these goods. As well as the social media channels. Twitter, we view as an asset. You can quickly respond to anybody who is who's saying negative things about your company, and we can address that, as well as Facebook. You can share a narrative on the whole process, which we will explain a little bit more here. But basically what we want to do is create a narrative arc that starts with the very basic beef. And from beef, we want to go to the farmer, who currently the consumer believes is the main part. But then we want to elaborate in the story and build up the technology you're currently using, why it's good, and take them through this whole process. So Instagram, we'll have videos of Betty Beef streamlined back to the website, in which mainly the content will be on.
So essentially, here's a breakdown of the activities and when they will be occurring. Now, this campaign we're discussing in a 1-year term, however, it's a very long term, 2, 3, perhaps even 4 years, because you have to take the time to build the trust between the consumers and the spokes cow. So in the first 2 months, we're going to be focusing on the digital real estate and search engine optimization, as Hayden described. Search engine optimization is when you punch in a keyword. What's going to happen is we're going to use those keywords to bring up your web page. In the 2 to 4 month period, we're going to be focusing on content creation, as just explained. And then 4 months onward, we would plan to post 2 billboards in the Saskatchewan province, one in Regina and one in Saskatoon, as they are big cities. As well as we would like to introduce Betty Beef. Betty Beef, our spokes cow, introduce her to the public and start handing out our promotional materials, focusing on our online content, etc., as well as direct mail, communicating. Betty Beef is our spokesperson who will tell you whatever you like to know.
What you see here is just a further breakdown of the costs associated with the campaign. Social media managers a pivotal part in this campaign as they have to do things such as the crisis control. An unhappy, very socially active, they believe they're well informed on the topic. We want to silence them with statistics and hard facts that you have. Also, daily monitoring, making sure that posts are being updated regularly, informing these consumers, as well as online marketing campaign. We've talked about the search engine optimization, as well as the $30,000 to be distributed to build up the campaign's objectives, as well as be able to have call to action back on our direct mail that we will be doing as well. The direct mail, we believe that we considered it not being effective to your target audience, the 18 to 30-year-old age, but we know that independent living is something that happens in this time frame, that if you're able to specifically identify these audiences, we can reach out to an approximate number of 100,000 to be able to just give them an informative slip in which they could go on the website, they could discuss, they could get in touch with us, and we could be able to hopefully establish a good relationship with them. The outdoor billboard, as well as we had mentioned, this is going to be running for 16 weeks. We will go through the timeline a little more here, but 16 weeks, that's going to start when we're introducing Betty Beef. It's going to run on until we believe that the social media advertising is being able to hold a strong enough point on its own, and then we will consider doing something like this in the future.
So some risks and mitigations to consider as we go forward with this Betty Beef campaign. First and foremost, backlash and criticism through your social media channels. Essentially the possibility of people opposed to the way you do business who are more in favor of the organic beef movement attacking the social media material that we post. Essentially, the mitigating factor that we have in place for this is timely, respectful responses supported with statistics that we're going to push out through the social media. Essentially, this will create for us as a benefit the public display in which people will see the debate taking place of negative points being brought up, and then we can counter them through the social media, through the information you can provide us going forward with this campaign. The ongoing restaurant ads, of course, as we continue with this campaign, the ads from Chipotle's, A&W are going to continue during this time. So the mitigating factor for that is going to be thought leadership and expert power through the industry testimonials that Hayden had discussed earlier. Essentially the testimonies from farmers, workers in the, say, packaging factor of the beef industry, different elements like that going forward to address those. Finally, most importantly, is the building up of trust over time, and that's going to be through transparency and communication, honesty about practices, as well as time to build up that relationship with the consumer.
Ways we will measure the success of this campaign is through the sale of beef in the Saskatchewan region, as well as other regions close to Saskatchewan, as well as the confidence in the Canadian food system. We will be monitoring these online channels as we did at the start of the campaign, and we'll be looking to see if there has been a slight decrease in the worry or the concern of what is in beef and why it is bad for you. And we hope that hopefully the communication is going to be silencing these worries and instilling a new mindset into what normal beef is. We understand that organic beef is a different segment all on its own, but the consumer is so easily decisive on why they should get organic or why they should get antibiotic. And what this campaign does is just brings a back to basic mentality on what beef is, what goes into the process, and why it isn't bad for you.
Some other considerations for different campaigns we've discussed going forward with this process have been, first of all, a what you save campaign. The industry analysis you provided for us identified that many of your customers highly value the price of the food. That's the deciding factor in what meat they buy. So one campaign we considered was focusing on the amount of money they save by regularly purchasing Saskatchewan beef. What's the benefit to them? What else can they buy, and how can they improve their lives by doing this? The primary concern with it is that it's not quite suitable for the objectives you have. It does not address the ads from Chipotle's A&W that I mentioned before. It doesn't communicate to them the holistic view of the industry that we want them to have. The second one is sort of an alternative version of the campaign we've discussed just now of using Farmer Frank as a spokesperson instead of Betty Beef, the spokescow. Now, as a spokesperson, Farmer Frank would be responsible for communicating the value of local beef, why Saskatchewan beef is beneficial in terms of business practices, but also just communicating why the farmer is important, why the industry is important. Now, the concern here, similar to the last one, is that it doesn't bring the holistic view of the industry. It focuses almost exclusively on the farmers, and it doesn't give the broad perspective that we want to give to your consumer.
So going forward as well, we're starting with beef, but who says we can't move into chicken or anything else in the agricultural industry, essentially? This is just a start. It's a start of a movement, and we're going to bring it back, as Hayden said, back to basics. That's how we're going. Continue narrative through social media streams. It's an ongoing thing that we would like to continuously communicate our message and convince people that it is okay if your beef has injections into it. Minor. There are facts to back it up, as well as focus on farmers, technology, and all the other areas that are so important.
We believe that beef is a good place to start, as we had mentioned. And we think that there is an increasing trend in a green-conscious consumer. And we think that if we can take a simple starting point like Betty Beef, what we can build up is that initial interest into something bigger, something like technology. Why does technology save money? Why are you paying less for this beef? And why is this helping you in the long run? And I think this is a great way for your company to be able to successfully communicate these values. We thank you so much for your time. We'll now open the floor to questions.
First question, I have two questions for you. One is, of course, before the larger market gets on board and supports this message, we need to first speak to that core group who will ultimately become those brand fans. What in the sentence is that key message that we're going to tell for them to be inspired to be fans of this campaign?
Trust. And we believe that trust is the main factor, because if you trust what the company is doing and the message that you're sending,
Yeah.
we believe that that trust in the communication of where you want to go and where you're starting is the most important to be able to sustain in the future.
And then that gets into my second question, which is, so then is trust is to be communicated using Betty Beef?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then is there any concern then that Betty Beef is essentially an advocate for serving up to friends?
That's true, but in the way I see it, with a lot of young people, we're going to relate better to an animated character than we are to this guy from a farm who's telling me things. We sit in class, we listen to people talk, but we get an animated character in there, and suddenly it's different. We want to listen, we want to be more engaged, essentially.
I have on your content creation, you said you're going to take a defensive strategy to address the main problem. Why would you choose to take a defensive strategy?
The content creation, that was one aspect of it, the defensive strategy. That's an immediate thing we want to do to silence those A&W Chipotle ads that are currently hurting our sales, or your sales, sorry. So that was more or less a sub-point under the content creation, an immediate thing to address.
I guess my question is, why take defensive versus an offensive or a proactive strategy?
For that, again, defensive, I suppose that what we want to go about doing is eliminating the thought of being an unhealthy product to consume. So that was the defense. But that's not to say that an offense wouldn't quickly come after that with the statistics we would put forward.
Do you feel that we've appropriately chosen the target audience given our objectives?
We believe you have chosen a effective target audience considering the campaign objectives, particularly when you consider the values of the customer as identified in what you've outlined for us, is that they most often value affordability of their food being the key decider of the product they choose to buy. This is particularly relevant to the 18 to 30-year-old range. They're younger, they're, say, university, they've just moved out, they need to conserve those funds, make it last, so they're going to be looking at that budget line. And additionally, they're also active in the growing health movement in society. So as they try to manage that limited budget, they're still considering the possibility of the healthier, natural choices, that type of option. So if we can target them with this campaign, bring them over, show them the benefits, the industry, and that it's more affordable, we can bring them over to this side and help you in the long term.
You've spoken a lot in your proposal about the, resolving the misconceptions about beef, about food, and water practices, but you didn't touch a lot on the career side. Only one of your slides kind of spoke to kind of how you're going to address driving people into agriculture careers. Can you tell me a little bit more about any of your plans?
Yeah, actually one of our future considerations is we would like to start setting up booths in areas like universities, and at these booths, essentially, we want to tell people that agriculture is more than just the farming side. There's a whole production line involved, there's packaging, processing, and getting it out to market. So Betty Beef, while communicating the message that what we're doing is okay, we're also going to be driving people in and telling them, because it's okay, come join us, come be a part of this great big thing.